let's do this, right? A lot has happened in Nigeria over the last few weeks. I mean, where to begin? Where to actually begin? Do we begin with the fact that the Nigerian Actors Regulating Body, that is the Actors Guild of Nigeria, suspended all film production set in the riverine areas across the country and films involving boat rides following the boat incidents that claimed the life of popular Nigerian actor Junior Pope and 4 others? While we're still dealing and navigating the events that led up to that tragedy, we have another legal issue that's, of course, raising the social media space with everyone asking, so Bobrisky was sentenced to 6 months in prison, while Kubiana chief priest was granted bail for 10 million on the same issue around naira mutilation. So what exactly is the law saying? Well, joining me now to give insight, entertainment lawyer Foza joins me from our Lagos studio. It's great to have you join me on Arise 360, Foza. Please confirm you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can. Hi. Good evening, Kachi.
Hi. How are you? It's great to have you. Okay, so let's begin with, I would say, the most obvious conversation. Just a couple of days ago, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, she was the Amora on the set of Rust, a movie that was being shot in Mexico, where the cinematographer Halinga Hutchins was killed from an accidental discharge of a firearm. Now, we saw how that case played out. This happened in 2021, and it brings me to Nigeria, where we saw 5 members of a crew in a Nollywood film drown as a result of an accident. Now, some might have called it negligence, some might also just call it an act of God. But with regards to the law, what are we looking at legally in a case like this?
So legally, looking at it from like the surface and the videos that became available online, it alludes to negligence, because you see like the boat members, or especially the late Junior Pope, was not wearing a life vest, right? Which is kind of like standard practice and procedure if you're going to go on the water. And there's an argument that it is primarily the responsibility of the producers or the employers, or his employers at the moment, which would be the producers of the film, to ensure safety. Because in your contracts as actors, we have health and safety precautions written into the contract, which ensures that whether it's on set or whether it's in transit to go and fulfill your obligation as an actor, the producer is responsible for your health and safety. And so you see clauses like ensuring that hospitals are at least 1 kilometer, nearby the set, or like, there is first aid or medical emergency practitioners on set while it's being filmed and stuff like that. So in this case, just on the surface level, you can allude to negligence, because the first thing that you see on the screen when the videos came out is no life jackets were worn. And if you see the video, it kept warning the boat driver to decrease the speed, and the boat driver was having fun increasing and decreasing the speed and whatnot. So in this situation, it will be interesting to see how the deceased family would react, to this situation. But it's almost a clear case of negligence, in my opinion.
Now, in a case like this, if at all it was going to go to court, who's bringing the case to court? Who brings a case like this to the courtroom?
In this instance, because you have debt has been involved, it's between negligence, and also there will be like a criminal situation towards it. So the public prosecutor of Rivers State would be involved in this matter. So it's now a state action in this situation. So the state will have to bring that to court.
Well, Foza, you mentioned something about contracts earlier. And if you watch the video, right, that Junior Pope did before this tragic incident happened, he had said, these are the things we do to entertain you. Now, I've heard this echoed severally. Ruth Kadiri equally, posted about the situation, and she said in her caption, the things we go through to entertain you. And people keep saying this thing, the risk we take to entertain you. And it makes me wonder, what kind of contracts are we getting? Are we getting contracts that these actors are, because if I have food, for instance, and you want something from me, and I tell you, okay, well, Foza, come and sign contracts. It's my terms, but you are hungry, you want the food, you want to eat it. So chances are you're more likely to just, okay, let me just sign. Not necessarily because you do not know your rights, but at the same time, I have something that you need. So with regards to the terms within these contracts, how are they shaped, or how could they be shaped such that people are no longer taking risks to entertain us?
So it's, we have an interesting, when I first came into the industry, it was kind of like a very interesting terrain. People were very averse to contracts. And when you insist on certain things, such as including a health and safety precaution or insurance in your contract, you're seen as being difficult, or you're seen as someone that doesn't want to work, and you get statements like, oh, your lawyer is going to ruin you, your manager is going to ruin you, and whatnot, and you get blacklisted. But significantly in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the industry has really improved and has really up to standards to ensuring that people are being safe on set. I remember there was a particular time I went on set on a very popular movie, and the cranes were being moved around, and I was just looking, and I was just like, I very much remember that I was asked to by my client to specifically remove the clause where I put that if anything happened to you on set, you can, in terms of injury, that the production will be liable to pay for it. I was specifically asked by my client to remove it because the production company was not agreeing to it, and she was almost going to lose the job. But when the crane was moving, which it eventually fell, but it didn't fall on anyone, I was just like, so if this had fallen on you, you would be responsible for your own hospital bills with no insurance from the company that engaged you. So for me, it's not much as the contract, because we are dealing with a cultural problem of when you speak too much, you're being seen as difficult, and you don't want to be blacklisted. And also from an ignorant point of view, where everybody, like most people, are not really aware of how this very minute thing that you refuse to fix is going to cause and escalate to a large problem, like somebody dying. When you tell someone, oh, it's kind of like the same thing. You tell someone to write away, oh, God forbid, I'm not going to die. It's just like, these are precautions that we take that to ensure that you've properly boxed everything and ensuring that that person or that production set is safe. So it used to be really bad. We're currently progressing. The orientation is changing. People are beginning to adapt to global standard. So I think with this event that just happened, it's going to be widespread nationwide, because this was really happening in the cinema world. Like the films that were done to go to cinema. This is very standard, where health and safety is paramount and number one. In the other parts of Nollywood, it's not as much, but now with these incidents, I'm pretty sure that people are now beginning go to look and be like, oh, look, we should put this into consideration. And as we progress and orientation keeps going, it just seamlessly happens, and it won't be such a hassle when you are arguing for your contracts.
Now, Foza, before we move to my next conversation, I would like your advice, right? Because I feel it boils down to, for a lot of creatives, take it or leave it, right? So, for instance, I had a contract with a client where it was about, cure period for a breach, right? And the contract basically said something like, if I'm reported or there's an issue, I have 24 hours to cure this, issue before, anything happens or before matters escalate. However, if they are the ones with the problem, I have to give them as much as 5 days for a cure period. And I asked myself, why? Why do you deserve 5 days and I just have 24 hours? So sometimes it's a matter of, in my own case, I was not okay with it. I could decide to walk away. But for lots of people, they don't have the luxury of that option. So they are faced with these egalitarian deals that they just have to take on. So if you were going to advise, what's the best way to handle those type of situations when you're in a contract where you know that this is not right, but you can't do anything about it?
So you see, one of my interesting slogan is that you never get what you're worth, you get what you negotiate in the contract, right? When you come to a table, there's always a slight imbalance or a very huge imbalance depending on what value each person is bringing to the table. But one of the things I tell my clients is that when you're entering into negotiation, never present yourself as this is a do or die affair. Right, you should always, at the back of your mind, have the mind to be like, okay, at any point, I can walk away. And so in terms of when you're negotiating, there are things that we refer to as deal breakers, right? So in your situation, that might have been a deal breaker. In another person's situation, it's not a deal breaker. The person can be fine with that kind of situation. So for me, it's usually, as lawyers, we try as much as possible to understand the context of which our client is coming from, so that we understand what the main goal of the client is when entering into that relationship. Some people's main goal can be money. Some other people's main goal can be exposure. Some other people's main goal can be qualification. So depending on what the main goal of your client is in terms of context, it helps you to know what the deal breakers are and what what you can allow and what you can't allow. Now, there are also things that you can't fight alone as an individual. So say, for example, pay, right? In the industry, there's like a unwritten rule or unspoken rule as to how much certain people get paid for certain things, right? And it's kind of like everywhere in the world. But what has happened is that people, talents, different stakeholders band together to create unions that set certain standards of stuff. So for example, with the Junior Popes matter, the AGN can come out and say, look, for every actor that is going to be on set, they must have, first aid on set. It must be included in your contract. You can't pay less than 10,000 naira per hour. You can't say, for example, work more than 15 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. So now if this is done by a union and, it's like 10,000 people standing on that, it's easy for one person to say, oh, look, but this is union standard. I'm not going to do what is less than union standard. Because now what's happening is FOSA says FOSA is not going to act because they've said that they're not going to give me life jacket or whatever it is. They leave FOSA and they come to Kachi, and Kachi is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it. But if there's a union standard, FOSA is going to be like, well, this is union standard. Kachi is going to be like, well, you can't pay me, you can't do less than what union standard is. By the time they go around, it's like everybody's following union standard. And that's what we call like collective bargaining, which we seriously need in the creative industry at this point, because there are a lot of battles that individual stakeholders can't fight alone. So for me, it's just like, I think we've gotten to an era where collectively, as stakeholders in the industry, we need to come together and set certain standards to ensure that things work, as opposed to the individual fighting that we've been doing for so long.
I couldn't agree with you more. This just takes me back to the Hollywood strike that we saw in 2023 with SAG-AFTRA. Those decisions were union decisions, and that's why everyone had to conform. Basically, it wasn't an individual pitching a fight, it was a whole union. But now let's move on to the naira mutilation, Foza. Everyone's asking the same question, but Bobrisky got 6 months. How come Obi Kubana was granted bail rather? Could you give it some context within the legal space, please?
So it's been such an interesting debate. Bobrisky pleaded guilty, right? And we need to understand that Bobrisky's case was concluded, meaning that it was sentenced. There was a judgment that was passed, and his judgment was, you're going to go to jail. In Cubana's case, the trial just started. it just came to court, and you can't keep him there because he has said he's not guilty. He's not guilty, and he has every right to, apply for bail, to be like, okay, I'm not guilty, but I'm going to be around, and I'm going to be around till when this case is over and when I get my judgment, which could be anything. His judgment can be the same as Bobrisky's own. His judgment can, be entirely not guilty, but you need to understand that the context is different. Bobrisky was sentenced, and his case was concluded, while Cubana's case just started, and his lawyers applied for bail, which is entitled to apply for, and it was granted. So that's the difference between the two, context.
Okay, so basically, there's nothing to celebrate just yet. The only difference is Bobrisky was not. I'm not sure if he was granted bail during his own period, because I know at some point he was not in prison and then he went right back, to conclude the case. So in Cubana Chief Priest's case, geez, the names are so similar, he hasn't gotten to the point of sentencing yet. So we don't even know whether or not he's going to be, put behind bars or not. Yeah,
so I first of all, Bobrisky's case was like record case fast. It was very fast, but I think that he was granted bail. I'm not too sure because I didn't entirely follow the issue, but I think he was granted bail, and he came back for when the case was concluded and to get his judgment. So at this point, like I said, Cubana just started his own conversation, and it's not like he's a high-risk offender or it's like a capital offense that's where he has to stay in jail. He's entitled to bail. So the only thing is like he probably can't leave the country till the case is determined or the case is concluded. So, yeah.
Well, in a nutshell, though, what do you think about the law? Section 21, subsection 1 of the CDN Act. What's your assessment of how we've handled it so far? Because I would always say this, within the creative industry, there are too many people who have been caught in this cycle of spraying. So is it a thing where everyone is like it's just going to come for you? If you spray money post 2007, well, they are coming for you. What's your assessment on what's happening?
First of all, I feel like all of us are going to be guilty.
You're not wrong.
But I think that this is more of a cultural reset issue as opposed to using a legal tool to correct a cultural mindset. I feel like EFCC should employ an expert that can leverage on the soft power of the creative industry to change the culture that they are looking to change. I'm not in agreement with this. I'm not in agreement with the judgment that was passed to Bobrisky. I have my reservations about it. I mean, the law says that it's either 6 months. It's either 6 months or fine or both. But I personally feel like I don't agree with the judgment, and I feel like the end goal of what they're trying to achieve is to have the community or have the society respect the naira. I don't think it's going to be done with the stick. I think it's going to be done more with the carrot, which is engaging. I mean, the creative industry is, you want to get something fast, you want to get something to impress people, the young people's mind and whatnot, or change a fundamental. I mean, this thing is ingrained in our blood. It's like we grew up looking at people showing off. You grew up seeing people spraying money, and it was normal. You can't just wake up and just say, "Oh, I'm going to lock you in prison because this is something that I grew up 30 years of my life or 31 years of my life observing and looking at." I feel like it's more of like EFCC should engage the creative industry and find a cultural story to be able to reorientate the people, just like the way the security agencies in the West use the media to orientate people. And I feel like just generally the government need to start understanding the real soft power of the industry, of what we have as an industry. I think the closest people to have gotten it right now is the political, people where they just come and sing at the lobby or whatnot. But we have so much to offer and so much role to play. If the government is interested in sitting down and working with us to understand the power that we bring, and it starts from federal all the way to like the local government, strategically helping to shape what the country, sees, listens to, understands and feels, at a certain point. So that's my personal view, and that's how I feel like it should be approached, just generally. So that's it for me.
Amazing, Foza. I think you've said it perfectly. Thank you so much, Foza, for your insight on these legal issues. It's very, very appreciated. Thank you for joining me on it.